one time where we had the bot misunderstood that he was talking about the mileage being, I think he said like the mileage is only 1,000. And then the bot immediately was trying to undercut. So he thought that he was saying the price is 1,000. So it was undercutting and said, how about 0? So basically our bot wanted to buy a car for free.
Today's guest is Andrew, the co-founder of Seez.co, a company that started as the Shazam-for-Cars and ended up transforming how dealerships across Europe and the Middle East sell, finance, and service vehicles with AI. In this episode, you'll hear how Andrew and his co-founder built their version in a Dubai penthouse with no furniture, no AC, and barely enough money to eat. We'll dive into how their AI chatbot once tried to buy a car for $0 and why that mistake changed their product forever, and what it takes to pivot from millions of B2C users to a handful of B2B clients without going broke, and why Andrew believes that if the first product isn't embarrassing, you launch too late. Let's dive in.
I want to ask you about the early days of how did Seez start and what's the inspiration behind Shazam-for-Cars?
Yeah, so when we started it was my co-founder. He basically was walking around on the street in Lebanon, and he had just sold his car and was moving to Abu Dhabi. But he had sold his car before because he needed to move. And then he found a car on the street that he liked, that he didn't know how could he buy it if he wanted to buy it. And he thought I wish I could take a picture of this car and know which car it was. At the same time, I was in the middle of my master's and working on image recognition. And one of the things that we were then talking about was it could be cool if we could build an image recognition that could recognize cars. So basically those two things came together. My master's became Seez. We started by scraping all websites we could find information about, find the raw data about on these car classifieds. Like when you're doing image recognition, you need a lot of data. And you need to classify that data as well, like go in and map every single field and say, this is a Mini Cooper, this is a whatever. And normally you would pay a lot of people a lot of money to do that, but classifieds around the world have done that already, and they have all the pictures and all the angles and inside and outside, and they have told you which car it is and the price and all that. So we did that. We took that information, we scraped it from across the world and brought it together and was able to build that image model. Which back then was revolutionary. It's 2016. Today, ChatGPT can do it in a heartbeat. But back then, we didn't have the same computing power. Even though at that time, we felt like we had a lot of computing power. And we didn't. And image recognition was in the very early stages. Transformers, the things that became the big change was coming up and launched in 2017 there. So this was the early beginning of Seez. Is some AI technologies that were blossoming, and a curious guy that just wanted to build these AI models, and a company that got started out of a need for finding a car on the street that you couldn't recognize for people that don't know anything about cars.
But even in Seez, AI was very integral part of it. It's not like now everyone has an AI person in the company. You even had machine learning guys in the early days.
We had them, always had a machine learning team. From day one, we were primarily machine learning guys, and then we just happened to learn other programming skills to build these apps. So the whole founding team, we were all either data engineers or data scientists, and we were all just learning, okay, I've never built an iOS app, but I can figure that out. And I've never built an Android app, but I can figure that out. So we were not developer experts in app. Back then we were building an app. So we were not experts in app, but we learned that because we had the curiosity and we wanted to build something. But we were always from the start, me and my team were always from the start AI first. And we always kept an AI team, even when we shifted into other things, and always took this approach on what could we do with machine learning? What could we do with these new different models that are popping up? So we're a little bit different from everybody else. So it's not just the same over and over again. Even throughout the AI winter that there was from 2017 until around 2022 was when ChatGPT was really taking shape again, and that was when we finally could benefit from all this investment we've made in AI over those years, because now we had a lot of experience in both image recognition and in text and in sentiment analysis, and there's so many branches of AI we had tried out and knew where are we strong, where are we weak, what kind of data do we need. So the minute the opportunity came, we were ready to jump on the wagon again.
Speaking on text, You even created an AI chatbot that negotiated with sellers using WhatsApp.
Yeah.
How were the early experiments of such product, and how did users react?
So we had some funny moments with that one there. So we built a very early version. Like back then, NLP was the biggest new thing, natural language processing. And it works a little bit more on keywords rather than what LLMs today, they work more on like trying to predict the next word. And so we built a bot there that would chat on WhatsApp. And the customers at first, the funny thing was because, like I said in the beginning, there's so many different cultures here in Dubai. The people that we were talking to in the beginning would not always speak very good English. So therefore, the bot could communicate with them as it was like any other person. Like they were having the same communication issues normal people would have. So you could, by actually just having very simple English, you could communicate quite effectively. What's your last price, kind of thing, and any damage on the car, like send me VIN number, send me tire pressure, send me like you could ask these very basic things, and people would just do it because that's how they communicated normally. Anyway, there was no like very advanced English that was going on. It was like because there were so many different cultures. It would even just think that like whoever our bot was like a half stupid person that was trying to negotiate with you. So they would send all this information, and we were able to negotiate. Very few actually found out that they were talking to a bot. We in fact never saw any messages where they're like, "Are you a bot?" Like it was all of it was like pretty natural. There was even an episode where our developers were like making fun of me by I had my car for sale at the time. And then they sent the bot after me to start negotiating with me. And I didn't realize it because they had created a whole new number, a whole new name. And I genuinely thought it was a person negotiating with me. So they tricked me even. So that was the first time we were like, okay, you like the Turing test is out the window. Now it's something else we need to start looking at. But there were some interesting ones. We also had some big failures. Like we had one time where we had the bot misunderstood that he was talking about the mileage being, I think he said like the mileage is only 1,000. And then the bot immediately was trying to undercut. So he thought that he was saying the price is 1,000. So it was undercutting and said, how about 0? So basically our bot wanted to buy a car for free. That became like an internal joke because AI, especially back then, made mistakes once in a while. And we should celebrate those mistakes as well. They were the funniest ones.
Any other funny or surprising stories from the early days that help you shape your product thinking today?
I mean, I think one of the key things in the beginning was our scrappiness. Like our start was sort of, in Silicon Valley, they're saying like a garage startup. Ours was like, we were 4 guys that moved to Dubai. We had a little bit of money and we basically just rented a penthouse in JLT.
Penthouse.
And yeah, we found a very, very cheap penthouse and rented that. And then that became our house, our office, and it became everything for us. But we had no money. So we were, it was totally bare. There was nothing in it. So the first week we were there, we were in a foreign country. We had never seen anything. And we were sleeping on the floors. And there was no AC because we came from Denmark. We didn't know you need to buy AC.
Oh no.
So we got in there. It's like, I called the agent after we had moved in. We're like, how do I turn on the AC? It's like, have you went and subscribed to it? Where do I subscribe to it? And then we had to figure all that stuff out. Then we had to go to IKEA and buy all the furniture. And we didn't know that would take 2 weeks. So we also didn't have any furniture.
Yes. We
had some really weird starts in Dubai. Like also one of our friends managed to find, like the way we found the furniture was that one of our friends, one of the guys that were there, like he met a girl that was an agent and they were like talking back and forth. And then he's like, yeah, we have no furniture in our apartment. And then she's like, oh, but I happen to have an apartment that's been left out and you can come and take anything you want because it's being emptied right now. I was like, okay. And that's how we furnished our apartment. We didn't have any style or anything. It was just being very scrappy and taking whatever we could. And that's like the Dubai version of the garage kind of thing. Cause like we came in a very, very nice apartment, but we had literally nothing to put in it. And our desks were just IKEA desks, and the dividers, when we were tired of looking at each other, were cardboard, and we were working 24/7. Like it was, but that created the culture for us as well. Is like, to be a real good startup, you have to dedicate like yourself 100%, and you have to be there in the trenches with each other, and you have to go through some tough times and like really get personal with each other. Otherwise, you're not really gonna make it and not really gonna make a difference. And you have to be scrappy, especially even when you raise money. You have to be scrappy because it's only going to last you so far. And the beginning we started with in that like penthouse, it sounds much better than it was, but was it taught us how to be like resourceful, and it taught us how to make the best out of what we had, and stay humble the whole way through.
Man, this is such an important point, because now I consult with a few startups, but they don't even have a product, and then they want to raise $1 or $2 million. And this sense of scrappiness now is kind of lost with this generation of new startups.
I feel it as well. But the funny thing is that now it's more than ever, they could build a product faster than ever. Like the age we're in right now, generally I build apps daily. Like I build stuff that I would have built in weeks or months. I built that in hours now. And it's sort of crazy for me, because I'm seeing that. At first I'm like, wow, this is a great time to start a startup. Everyone should do it. And generally everyone should do it right now. There isn't a better time if you ever wanted to. There's no barriers anymore. But that also means everyone is doing it. So like, it's also a bloodbath at the same time. But if you're good and you are hardworking, you're scrappy, and you really want to like give it a shot, you believe in it 100%, there has never been a better time than now, because you don't need a technical co-founder. You can do most of these things yourself. You don't need to limit yourself in the way you did in the past. You don't need to raise as much money as you did in the past. It's much more achievable now, which is like this Goldilocks zone right now before like everybody catches up. This is the Goldilocks zone for doing it. But you also just need to be ready for it. This is also the most competitive startup has ever been, and it will only continue becoming more competitive in the future. So I don't know when is the right time to do it, but right now is a pretty good time from what I could see.
Absolutely. And then the reason why, for me, Seez is a very interesting use case to study, because you guys were not really married to the idea or the problem that you're solving, and you guys first decided to start with Shazam-for-Cars, but eventually you guys pivoted from consumers to dealership. What did make you realize that this is like there's a bigger opportunity for dealership?
So I think the most important thing was, when you're building a company, you're trying to find product market fit, right? However, there's different stages of product market fit, and sometimes product market fit is only temporary. Because the markets are changing so fast. So when we started this thing here out, like the Shazam-for-Cars, it was also like we were aggregating cars across multiple different sites. And so basically you could search across all the different car classifiers in UAE, and we had them united. We were like number 3 in the App Store, and I think number 4 on Google Play. Like we were quite popular back then. But the problem that there was is people don't want to pay for these kind of things here. Then you have to find another way. So we found product market fit for people wanted to use our app, but they didn't want to pay for it. Sort of like how Facebook, like everyone wants to use Facebook, but they don't want to pay for it. The problem was also that we didn't have then enough volume, because we're very niche in that time. So we had to find other ways of making money. So on the data side and on like market analytics and those kind of things. And we made that work, but then the market shifted. Like COVID happened, and we had to be like, okay, if the market is shifting, where do we go next? And it's always about like looking into where are these problems and what's worth solving? Like, where are the hard problems? Like, especially looking for hard problems. That was the biggest thing we were going for. And we just constantly stayed it was in the same industry all the time, but we were always looking for, with our knowledge and with our capabilities, where can we deploy the technologies we have and the skills we have to solve big problems? And that's what kept us going and kept us like pivoting along the way. But it always stayed in the same tone of like always something where we could utilize our AI skills, always something where we could utilize like massive amounts of data to try to get insights, or like we were either aggregating or like solving big problems with using big amounts of data. So it was always that core was always the same, and the skills of the people were always the same. It was just how we used those to solve problems. That's what changed.
So what was the problem that you guys are solving in B2C, and what is the problem that you guys are solving in B2B?
So in B2C, the biggest problem was that there's so many different like options out there, especially when you're looking for a car, that you have FOMO for, could I get it cheaper somewhere else, or could I get a better price? So could I get it cheaper somewhere else? That's the aggregation part. We aggregated everything. And could I get a better price? That was the chatbot that negotiated the price down, even if it negotiated down to 0. Then the second part, when we were going to the dealerships, it was their biggest problem was how, like when you're going into COVID and you can't sell cars physically, how do you sell cars online? There was nobody that was selling cars online at the time. And only in the US, it was just blossoming a little bit.
Only Tesla, and Tesla was very scrappy as well.
And yeah, Tesla is scrappy, but also Tesla is a very unique situation in that the automotive industry is, to say it simply, like super, super complicated. And that's an understatement. Like there's so many things that goes into like building a car and selling a car and then distributing those cars as well. Because a car is sold multiple times throughout the channel. Like they're sold from the OEM to the dealerships, and then from the dealerships, like sometimes to other dealerships, and then from those dealerships to the end consumer. There's so many layers in between. Tesla was the first to go from OEM to a consumer. That meant they could cut their costs significantly, but that also meant they had to solve a ton of issues, battle a ton of political pushback. Still today they do that as well. So saying Tesla could do it, Elon Musk pulled off a miracle when what he did, and like you can love or hate him, but like he's really good at solving really big problems. And this was the same thing we were then looking at and saying, okay, so there is a solution, and we know what it looks like if you can just take the straightest path. It's still not a straight path, but the straightest path is Tesla. How do we do it with all the other ones that have these weird intertwined political structures and still manage to sell the cars? Because there's an element which Tesla still didn't solve, for example, on financing. Like, how are you going to finance the car? Most people that buy a car don't have financing. So that was a big problem in the financing sector. But getting a license for that is a little bit more complicated. There's the insurance of the car. That's not too complicated. It's pretty straightforward. You can do that. Then there's the buying of the actual car. But there's multiple elements in that journey on like, what kind of car are you going to get? Are you going to get a new or are you going to get a used? And it needs to be registered. It needs to be, if it's used, you have to also verify that it's like roadworthy and get all the paperwork done, all these things, and get it registered. If you buy a pair of shoes, you don't have to register your pair of shoes. So all of these small steps in themselves are something people can solve on their own, but there's so many of them that there's a lot of value to solve there. And this is what we gave to the dealers. We gave a solution that takes this super complicated, intertwined solution and simplified it for them so they could sell cars to their customers, and the customers could buy a car and still still do all those steps, but do them much more transparently and much more easily. The funny thing that the biggest pushback we got was the transparency side, because there's also deliberately a lot of intransparency in the industry. So we had to also navigate that on like, how do you show the real price? People want to negotiate. People like all of these things. There were still issues we had to deal with along the journey. But that was the problem we were solving for the dealerships.
But still, can you walk me like a specific use case, exactly the problem that you're solving with dealership? Is it the registration part or like aggregating part or?
So it was on that side, it was mainly like the whole buying process, because there's multiple steps where you have to go back and forth.
Okay.
And if you're buying it today, in Dubai, it's a little bit easier, but in most other countries, it's a lot of like going there and then sitting in the showroom for hours to like first like do the financing, get that approved, and then do the registration, and then like, or pick the colors and all this kind of stuff. Here, you could just go there, test drive the car, go home, and then do everything from home. Like all of that stuff back and forth, it would just be done at home. And it sounds super simple, but it's just, that was what we were solving. That you could, without having to be there physically, you could do all the work, and you could take a break when you needed to and come back again. You could come and do the test drive when you needed to. There's a ton of paperwork involved in that we helped solve. So that was the thing we were streamlining the whole like buying process.
Do you guys have experience in automotive industry? Because you really need to understand the automotive industry inside out to solve all those problems.
No, but we did that from just... Everything was just, we went there, and this is again like the scrappy part. We found a dealership in the beginning, like actually quite a big one. We went to back to Denmark to solve this problem. We found a dealership in Denmark. They were the second biggest one, and we literally sat with them in the trenches like for weeks and just understand how does every single part work, and wrote down like process charts that were like meters long to understand like, okay, so the customer walks in. If he wants an offer, what do we do with the offer? What if he wants to renew the offer because the offer only has a certain length? So we were going through every single one of those and asking questions like, why are you doing like that? Why are you doing it like that? And we were probably the most annoying people they had in that showroom, but we studied them very, very closely to understand what was going on. And then from that, we were able to cut out a bunch of different pieces. And then also that's the other thing we didn't talk about as well, and that is like there's a ton of different software, because they've been building this kind of thing here with many different software solutions, and we were cutting many of these out as well. So that was the value we were focusing on, is like make it simpler, understand them very like deeply, and it took a lot of time for us to actually get to understand that. But by doing that, we also became experts, which allowed us to do like more in the future as well, because now we understood where the real pain points were. And it sort of also gave us respect with our customers in the future when we went in, and they were, because everybody was trying to sell software to the car dealers, But when we were going in and saying like, what's the toughest thing you have to deal with when you're like buying a car? It's like, the trading car. That's the biggest thing you have to figure out.
Training car.
Trade-in car. Like the car you have that you need to get rid of.
Okay.
That's the biggest problem you have to solve if you actually want to sell a car. And us knowing that and us being able to tell them like, and the hardest thing is figuring out what should you buy it at. That's that's the hardest problem to deal with. And when we could say that to them and they knew exactly what our problem was, like, okay, they know that we're like them. Like we haven't sold cars like them. Actually, we have, but that wasn't what they were respecting. But they were respecting that we understood the problems they were dealing with.
But how did you find the first customer, the early customer in Denmark, and how did you convince them, guys, let us stay with you guys for weeks? And because they will think, why are we wasting our time?
Yeah, so we made deals with them, basically saying like, if like when we started this thing here, I was like, if we make this deal here, you have the right to invest in us at a good price. So if you like this thing here, you have an option to invest. So that was the first part of saying like, because we're not public, so everyone couldn't go and do it. And if they believed in our idea, they had the option to invest. But a big part of it was also we were solving a real problem that they had. So we said, like, we're not going to charge you for all the time that we're spending here in the showroom and learning. We're only going to charge you for the product that we're actually going to build. But all the learning part and all these things here, we're not going to charge you for that. In return for that, you get the right to invest if you want to. But then it was also our past. Like you slowly, the journey is never linear. Like all the stuff that we did in Dubai and everything we were doing on
the BTC app about.
Exactly. Okay. But that created like a ton of respect as well. Like when you come in and said like, yeah, we built an app and it was able to be number 3 in the UAE and number 4 in the App Store. Then it creates some respect. People will be like, okay, I'll listen to you. They won't buy you their product straight away, but they will listen to what you have to say and they will take a chance on you. And these were the things, like we did a lot of things that allowed us to have people take a chance on us. And we just kept doing that every single time.
And the first MVP or the prototype, exactly, remember like what are the main problems that you guys focus on? Because again, you told me that there's multiple problems you can focus on.
Yeah. So the main thing we're focusing on was trying to bring all those different systems into one, and then making it transparent between the buyer and the seller to make sure that they like the information that was being given about like where's the car, how much it's going to cost, and all the financing status and all that was transparent. That was the main thing we're focusing on in the beginning.
Took you guys a year to do that?
Took us 9 months to build the first version.
Okay.
Which I mean, by today's standards, you can build a lot faster, but back then it was fast. But I was still not like we would never be proud of that version. It was scrappy as hell. It has to be. If you build something that doesn't look like shit, then you launched way too late.
Too late, yeah.
It has to be really broken. And if it's not full of bugs and all that kind of stuff, then you really didn't do it right. Like it's about being scrappy and it's about getting feedback. It was the feedback was the most important part because So let me take the example in here. Like we built the first version, we were like, okay, we're building a linear flow. All the people that walked into our showroom that was buying the cars, they were buying with trade-ins. We knew trade-ins were important, so we had them in there. It was part of the deal. The first car we were doing in our system had 2 trade-ins. Our system did not support 2 trade-ins. How are you going to do 2 trade-ins? Like, so there was always these things here. Like you have to go live to learn these edge cases and they turned out to happen more often than we ever saw in the showroom. But these things here only happen once you actually go live. And you could never think of them. You can never think these ones here up and say like, yeah, there's going to be people that are going to have 2 trade-ins. The second car we had 3 people for financing. It was like, what the hell? Why do you need 3 people? Yeah, there's the father that's basically securing the loan. And then there's a couple that's buying the car. It was like, oh my God, 3 people on the same, okay, let's do this. So these are the issues we had to deal with and learn about.
Man, that's the problem that I have with my product managers, because sometimes they sit in their office for like 2 weeks, try to figure out all the edge cases and try to think out the best feature requirement. And eventually when we ship, we're like, yeah, we just waste all this time. We could just have shipped sooner and learned all of this.
Yeah. A lot of people are perfectionists. I don't know if like where it comes from, why so many people think, maybe it's in our education system or I don't know where it originally comes from, but I find a lot of people are perfectionists. And in startup, you can't be a perfectionist if you want to build something that's great, because I think too many people look at Apple products or all these great products that are out there and think like, wow, this is so amazing. But they forget that these products are iterations after iterations after iterations of the most crappy versions. If you look at the first version of the Apple computer that was ever built, it looked like a cardboard box with like chipped glue to a PCB board. It was it was nothing near the aluminum case that we're seeing today that's so beautiful. And this is how you have to start as well. It's if you're building something that's worth solving, then it really doesn't matter how shitty it is in the beginning, because if it's worth solving, then people will bear with how shitty it looks. People will bear with all the bugs that there are because it's solving an actual problem. And that's what people forget about, is that the sooner you launch, the sooner you can get validation. Am I solving something worth working on? And a lot of product managers have a tendency to think about, because they've worked in big companies that have solved these problems, have a tendency to think about, how do I fine tune and how do I make this look beautiful and how do I make a great user experience, which is also very important. But it's not as important as making sure you're solving a real problem. Because if you're fine tuning every single bit and you're not solving a real problem, then you're just putting like glory on something that's not working.
But you did something very interesting, which is you found a customer that have this pain point and you build the product with them.
Yes.
What do you advise for people to finding the first 5-6 customers that are like B2B SaaS?
I mean, it's going out there. You have to convince somebody, and the bigger they are, or the more representative they are of the majority of your other customers. Like, you have to do your business analysis in the start. You have to know, am I targeting? Like, we targeted, for example, the most premium car dealerships, like the biggest ones.
Mercedes was, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And also, like, not just the brands, but also like the size of the businesses. We were targeting the bigger ones because they were the ones that had the biggest problem with this. The smaller ones, we tried to see, could we do it for them as well? The problem was just that they were so scrappy anyway that they would always like be one-on-one with the customers, because it was the same guy that was just handling the whole thing, and the whole concept was different for them. Like, they weren't as streamlined, they didn't have as linear processes and all that kind of stuff. So our solution didn't work well for them. So you need to understand first, the problem I'm trying to solve is like, who is the real customer, and find the representative of that. And then it's just about your charisma. It's about like people falling in love with your enthusiasm and with your energy. Like, if you cannot convince them based on just like your hard work and your dedication towards this thing here, that you're going to make this thing happen, then you're going to have a tough time. You don't need to be a salesperson, but you need to be like very convincing on these things here. And you have to convince those first customers of, you have to go for this. And this comes from just a pure passion. Like, if you can see somebody's passionate about something, like, even when I see it in other industries today, I'm just like, I don't know what the hell you do, but I want to work with you. Like, and this is what you have to do when you find them. Be passionate, like, and also be ready for a beating. Like, there were so many people that was telling us like, you cannot sell cars online, like, so many. And then
it was a very new idea at the time.
Yeah, but also like they were just, because they didn't know what you couldn't do. Like, one of our strongest like abilities as a startup is you don't know what's not possible. So therefore, you will go and do something that everybody will say is impossible because you're too stupid to know that. But you will then later figure out that they were actually right, but you found a way. And that's the thing. Like, your naivety and your like just going in there, and your childishness is actually what creates these great products. Is going in with some naivety and say, I'm not going to listen to the status quo. I'm not going to listen to the market, like what the market is saying, and I'm going to try to do something because there's a problem worth solving, but everybody's afraid of solving it because they think it's not possible, but they haven't figured this one thing out that I figured out. That's what makes makes the difference. And that's why you have to spend so much time in the trenches, because you need to really understand and come in with a fresh mindset. And it's also something, when I bring in new employees and they're not from the automotive industry, one of the first thing I ask them is like, tell me about their naive things that you see that I don't see yet. Because this fresh naive mindset to the problems, like, sometimes we'll just be like, yeah, you don't understand what we're talking about. But it also reminds us to sometimes go back and say like, hey, maybe we have put our minds to how things are going to be working like too much in stone. We have to go back and rethink.
So when you hire people, do you prefer to hire from the automotive industry or like a fresh?
So in product, it's always good to have a little bit of experience in the automotive industry. But I think it was we hire more for people that are passionate about it, but not necessarily in the industry. And then I prefer hiring just smart people, because you can always learn these things. Like, we learned it. We were not automotive people when we started. Now I know a lot more about automotive. Like, I cannot go toe-to-toe with some of those automotive experts that I meet once in a while, but I know my basics. I can have a good conversation with a petrol head. But when we look for people, we're looking more for, again, their enthusiasm, their curiosity, their grit, and their willingness to not look at this is my role, but more like you're going to be part of this organization. Let's figure out what you're actually going to be doing based on what you're good at. That's what we really look for. And then, of course, experience helps, but it's definitely not the first thing we look for. And we learned very early on, we had some very valuable lessons on the people that are very corporate heavy on these things are typically also too set in their mind about what works and what doesn't work. But they do also come with some really valuable insights. But the question is, how do you want to make that work with the business? Because they know some things and can see some things you can't see. But at the same time, they're also going to be no-sayers to some of the things that you want to try out. So you have to figure out a balance, either have them as consultants or bring them in, but put them into a role where they don't interfere too much with your innovation. You have to figure out a balance where they get in and you get their experience without letting them like overrun your new and crazy idea that you're going with.
But what was the hardest part from pivoting from a B2C application with million users to a B2B SaaS?
The sales cycle. Like we were used to like, so when we're doing the app, I genuinely didn't understand how big our app was. Like I could see a number that showed millions, but I could not comprehend that there were millions of people with our apps on their phones. And that, like, I knew exactly what my cost per click was. I knew exactly what the conversion rate was. Those things I knew like to the heart, and it was everything we cared about. We were super obsessed about that. We were super obsessed about like how the metrics were when they came into the app and all that stuff. And then when we started with B2B, it was all about the relationships. It was all about the like making sure that you're talking to the right person. It was all about the contract lengths with the existing competitors that they were with. It was all about many small political things that we were not used to. And then time, because we were used to getting a customer in seconds, right? Like we would just push this ad out, and then we would start getting users installing it. Here we were months without anyone like converting, and just like we had that first customer, we had to build the first version. We couldn't sell to anyone else in the meantime. We managed to actually sell to the second customer right before we went live with the first one. But it was like it was very tough in the beginning, and we didn't see a lot of light in that tunnel there for a while, because now we're shifting into a whole new industry, like a whole new way of doing things, and you need a whole other type of marketing. Like you're no longer focused on like trying to do like these things that catch people in the typical like Instagram ads or Facebook ads or something like that. Now you're targeting more like proper old school like branding or like events or being at conferences and catch them there. Be sponsors at a conference was never something that you would do in like when you're going to direct to consumers, but when you're going B2B, you definitely have to consider that these are options, like something you should look at as well. And speaker slots and all this kind of stuff is important.
I think you launched the first product in GTEX, no?
That was our first like one that was directed towards the dealerships. Yeah, that was how we started the whole like online buying part, was actually with the RTA here in Dubai and with BMW. They were selling their first cars fully online. Again, we had to learn the scrappiness of that. But they had built like the blockchain solution for registering cars and all that. And we were working with them on that to launch it in collaboration with BMW, and we launched that in GTEX. And that was how all the Mercedes and BMW like clients knew about us.
Okay.
So we met with the head of the European Mercedes Dealer Association. He was there, and then he said like, this is super interesting. Let me introduce you to some people. And then that's when we got in contact with, out of many, the Danish guys, and they saw a bunch of Danish guys again, and they were like, this is good. And then, yeah, we started clicking really well. We still like have them as customers, still talk to them all the time. They're still like some of our favorite customers. So yeah, they're like, it all started in GTEX there.
So B2C apps, they tend to sell themselves, just run a little bit of ads. But with B2B, did you guys had to hire some more salespeople, some sales force?
Yeah, and we also had to ourselves. Like in the beginning, you are the best salesperson, right? We didn't have salespeople before, and then we had to go out and sell. It was almost like starting a whole new company, right? Like we could have, and multiple times we were questioning, should we have done that? Like we could have gone bankrupt after COVID and just said like, everybody's stopping using marketing. Everybody is like, and we're running out of money. We're closing down. The business is not working. We could have done that. But we were lucky that we'd raised a round of money right before COVID happened. We didn't know COVID happened. We raised it right before. So we could have just gone back to investors and said, here's your money. Like, we're not going to do this. We're going to shut down. But instead, we decided, no, there's this opportunity we found, and we actually want to go for it, because we had started the work with the RTA before that happened. We had started these things, and we were seeing, like, believe there was something there. So we decided, no, we're going to go for this. We're going to actually go and build like what we've been researching, what we've been seeing before, and that we now have a customer for. But we didn't have a lot of money for that. So we had to be scrappy again in this situation here. We couldn't just go out and hire an army of salespeople. So we had to be the first salespeople. And then we started hiring more people to do the sales as well.
But this pivot must have been very scary. I mean, because you have your team, you have your investors, you have your customers.
Yeah. I don't think it's scary. It's you get anxious from it a little bit. Like it's
a little bit.
Yeah, a lot of sleepless nights. But I never felt scared in the whole thing, because it's always like we didn't do these things here like naively. We always had really good data in the background. We always had an idea about, like, we truly believed in what we were doing and where it was going. So then it's not scary. It would be scary for me if we went out and I genuinely felt like we were wasting our investors' money. If I felt that we were going out and just like slacking off and not like making anything happen, we're just playing around, then I would have returned the money straight away. But we knew we were going into something that was worth solving. So we were very confident in trying to solve this problem and find a solution. And we'd done something like this before, so we were confident in that we will find a way. It was more a question about how is that going to happen. We had no idea, and that's what's the anxious part of it, is like, how are we actually going to achieve it? But we were never scared of the pivot, because we'd done pivots before. We had started like from scratch before. We could do it again. Like, we had the confidence in ourselves to do that.
And how did you align this pivot with the team, the investors, and the customers?
So we started with the team. We have an amazing team. First of all, like the ownership in our team and the dedication from our team, like all the way from back then, is just phenomenal. And many of them are still with us. So with them, it was just a direct explaining to them the situation. I think maybe it's just the people we hire, but for me, one of the best ways of getting people aligned is by just giving the full context, telling them, why are we doing this? And going in and explaining that we're not just doing this, like, not just telling like, you have to do this. It's like, we're explaining why, and we're explaining like, what does this mean here, and basically pitch to them the same way we would pitch to an investor. They need to believe in it as much as we do, because they're going to be the ones who are going to be building it, and we're just going to be like running around and trying to make all the fires like go out. So it was, first of all, it was selling it to them, making sure they were aligned, making sure they believed in this thing here, and really spend a lot of time on that, and also get their input, because they were like, we wouldn't have done this pivot if it wasn't for them. And then for the investors, it was showing them like the data we had already looked at, the research we'd already done, like when we were starting out here in Dubai, and seeing that there were some big players that were already starting to take these moves here. So there was a lot of foundational, like in other countries that was already starting in these countries. The valuations were already through the roof happening with these companies here. So we could prove that like others are doing it and they're having a success. So that's how we convinced them as well on this thing here. And we were lucky we had investors that believed in us on these things here. I don't think they knew like exactly what it was we were going for, but they believed in like, we had figured stuff out before, so they believed in us, not in the idea. I don't think they analyzed it to the nth level, like, this is the best kind of thing here, but they believed in me and my co-founder of like, even though we sometimes are a little bit crazy, we were still onto something.
Now the Seez platform is very big. Can you give me a quick overview from Seez Click, Seez Pad, Seez Nitro, Seez Boost, and Seez Czar?
Yeah, so basically, when we launched like here with the new AI tools, like Caesar was the one that became the big like flagship that we've been pushing out lately. Now Seez Click and Seez Pad is the online sales part that we're doing there. So that one is the one we're basically selling to the enterprise clients. So we refer to that as our enterprise products. And this one here is typically, it has a much longer sales cycle. It's a much more like a sticky business as well. A much more complicated solution. So it's not something we just can roll out like this. It takes a bit of time for us also to deliver it. So that's like the bread and butter of like once we've sold something, they're sticky, they stay. Caesar is much, and all the there's sub products under Caesar as well, but Caesar is much more of a get it into the dealer's hands very quickly, get them to experience what it's like working with us. Because a big part of what we're selling is not just our products and our solution, is also what it's like to work with us. Like, we come with an energy that many of the dealerships are lacking. Like, it's not that every single dealer in the world are the most enthusiastic, but they love working with us in this. So we try to show them as well as like, try Caesar, try like what it's like to work with us and the solutions we build. And if you like our products and our company, buy some of our other products. And that's how we try to upsell some of the other solutions as well. Because the sales cycle on the enterprise solutions are very, very long, where Caesar is one of the few B2B products that can actually sell in like a sales cycle of a month, which is very rare. So it's easy to integrate and easy to set up. So we could move much faster there. And then Seez Boost was basically, there was another problem in this, and it's like, to sell cars, you need to market. And very few dealers have done anything outside of just regular classifieds. So it was just another need that we're in. There's like, okay, how can we use our AI capabilities to do that? But then it all fitted in nicely together as well. So you start the journey on buying a car by going on a marketplace. Like, you go in and say, like, either on Dubizzle or Dubicars here in Dubai, or Car Switch or wherever you go. And then once you found the car you like, you start reaching out to them. But most of the times you're going to be doing it with the dealership. Even if you're looking on like those classifieds, like 90% of them are dealerships still. So you go in and you start talking to a dealership. Let's say you decided to go with Altair. So you message them and say like, hey, I'm looking to buy this car. Is it still available? And so on and so forth. Somebody has to pick up that lead. But at this moment, like, the salespeople will be very slow at answering in most situations. This is where Caesar then kicks in and be like, okay, so Seez Boost will get you the customers come in either from the classifieds or from Facebook marketing. Once they come into the funnel and they've actually started like interacting with the dealership, who is going to answer? Caesar. He's instant. You don't have to, like, it's 24/7 instant. It has more information than any of your salespeople could ever ask for. It answers better than most of your salespeople would ever do. And then once it has gotten the customer more warmed up and is ready to go for a test drive, he can then send him to a test drive to talk to an actual human. So the whole process where most of the leads drop off, and it's a massive problem, like how many leads drop off in that early stage, Caesar solves that. Then once you're in the actual showroom and you need to do a test drive, there's all this paperwork we did for the enterprise solution. And that's where that kicks in and actually helps on, okay, so you want to do a test drive. You have to sign some paperwork to actually do the test drive. You have to upload your documents. You have to be GDPR compliant in Europe or data compliant here in the UAE. That's also something the dealer has to take care of. This is all part of the journey of buying it. Then you decide to buy the car. Everything that goes in that, we solve that with enterprise. And then you have to service the car afterwards. That also goes into it. And then once you're being serviced, you also need reminders of these services. This is what we follow up as well. So our whole portfolio is basically just this journey. We're building products that just fit into this buying journey and owning a car journey. Where can we utilize technology and AI to solve the journey the whole way through?
So I'm going through the same thing in my startup. So those 5 products, they each solve a specific problem on its own. Eventually you decided to do them as one platform.
Yeah.
Or did you guys decide, no, let's do a platform and let's build those products?
No, they came naturally on their own based on like, we were solving part of it. So we started with the enterprise part, solving that. And then because we were also selling cars online in Denmark, a side thing we did was also open a marketplace in Denmark to sell these dealers' cars themselves.
Side quest.
Yeah, an expensive side quest, but it taught us a lot. But so we were selling cars ourselves. And then when we did that, we learned, oh, damn, one of the things we waste the most time on selling cars online is customer support. Like, there was 21 points, even though the car was sold fully online, 21 points where they had to interact with humans. That was way too much for us. Like, and we realized that's where all our money is going to be going, is towards people answering stupid questions like, where's your showroom? We don't have one. What are your opening hours? We don't have any. What are your like those kind of like basic questions? And the dealers are dealing with the same questions. Like, there's the same questions over and over again. You could find it on the website. That's why I call them stupid, because you can find them, but people still ask them. And that's how Caesar was born. It was like out of a necessity to solve our problem. And then we're like, okay, other people have this problem as well. And then it became a product on its own. And then Seez Boost was, well, we need to do some marketing to get this thing here. We hired like external companies to do our marketing in the beginning, and we found it super inefficient. We're just like, wait, we know from the old days that like we could get really cheap downloads. Why can't we get something similar here now? Why are they not using any kind of AI tools? Why are they not optimizing the same way we used to? So we were like, okay, let's go back and see, like, there's some inefficiencies in this thing here. We can do better. And one of the things was they didn't use the data from the websites properly. They didn't use any kind of AI tools to optimize for your audience. They didn't know anything on what was going on and like filtering any sort of thing. So none of the platforms that we were using there, and they were all for some weird reason pushing for radio and TV. Or like, we were selling cars online. Do you think they were going to do that from the TV? So we basically built a new product for that because we realized there's a big issue here that is not being addressed, and we needed to solve that. So that's how we came up with it. It was like we started one place, we found that there were more and more issues we were facing, and we started solving these problems. And in the end, that's the sum of the value of a company is like the number of problems you solve. I think that's the Spotify founder that said that.
Daniel, yes.
Yeah.
So there's those 5 products. Caesar was the easiest to sell because you can show return on investment faster, or people can understand the value faster.
Yeah, they can show return on investment faster. We can deploy it faster. It's very easy to do an MVP. It has everything that makes it just easy. It's easy to embed, easy to like prove, and you can do a trial period very quickly and say like, if you don't like it, then just jump off.
And people, they were easy to convert if they're using Caesar to other products.
Yeah. So there's like Caesar in the beginning was just like the opening door. Then there's the other Caesar products that we were selling under for like servicing and re-engagement and those kind of things, and assisting their customer support as well. Their customer support has the same issue internally. Like when you call up somebody on the phone and ask them a question, you're not talking to a guy who has like an encyclopedia in his brain. He has to look it all up for you. And that's what we also help with as well, using these technologies. So we started with all of these, like here, now you have the whole Caesar suite. Let's give you the enterprise suite as well, so you can start solving more problems. But it's about this thing here, them realizing we can solve all these problems for them. And when you get, like, this is another problem, when you have a platform with multiple different products in it, you need to be very careful with which products are you trying to sell to your customer when. Because if we went in the beginning and we were showing them our whole portfolio, and the information overload was just insane. So now we changed our strategy. So we start with Caesar. And then while we're doing Caesar, tell them a little bit about Seez Boost, because that's also an easy one to go in and offer. So tell them about those two. Get them excited about that. And then once we have a conversation and once we get to know each other a little bit better, show them some of the other stuff we have. But don't try to put it all at once, because people have such a small attention span that you're never going to convince them of all of your products at once. Even if you have the best pitch, the most clear understanding, it's still never going to work. You have to be so laser focused on, like, you want to go in there, you want to sell one product, pick which one it is. You're only going to sell one of them in the first try at best.
And what makes Caesar, your sales assistant, much better than a basic chatbot?
So first of all, it uses the latest LLMs models that are out there. So one of the key things, especially, and this is more to the AI age today, is like that most of the companies that you're going to see today are wrappers around the big LLM models. And Caesar is a wrapper around LLM models, but it's not one, it's all of them. And we were one, like, and then it was about us going out and being like, we really invested heavily in being the first movers on the technologies that were coming into this new era. Because what people wanted wasn't just they wanted an AI chatbot. They could see the value in that from the start. It's like, it's as smart as our people. Obviously, we're going to go and buy that. It can convert leads. Obviously, we're going to go and buy that. But then the competitive advantage was, how are you going to differentiate yourself when everybody else can go and say ChatGPT and all these kind of things? So we had to pick our key things that we cared about. The first one was security. One of the things that dealers we know from our industry here is most afraid of is their reputation. Even though they're not known for having great reputation, that's one of the things they care about the most. It's about, I don't want to make a mistake and by mistake sell a car for $1 like Chevrolet did in the beginning when LLMs came out. I don't want to go out and have my data suddenly get leaked into Gemini or OpenAI and all. So they were very afraid of that. I don't want to have my data float around, even though they float around in Outlook. They don't want it to float around inside some kind of server somewhere they don't know. So they were very concerned about that. So our first part we were focusing on is, how do we make it as secure as possible and as compliant as possible? Because when you're going into a new industry, the number one thing the IT department is going to challenge is the compliance. So get our SOC 2 compliance, get our ISO compliance, get all GDPR compliance, all of that and sorted out, because that on its own was a sales point. It's like, you can go and build it yourself, but you're not going to be compliant, or you can go with us, we're compliant. That's how we started. Then there was all the, like, making sure we use the latest technologies. Like when Agentic popped up, we were one of the first to jump on the bandwagon. And when all of these new ways of doing operators and ways of doing voice and all this kind of come on, we were the first to go in and look into and say, like, how are we going to utilize this? So what we were offering the dealers was also like stay in the front line of what's actually happening. We will advise you, we will like build better products and so on. So that was also part of the journey, that we kept on going at that. So with those two things, we sort of like were able to say, okay, these are things that are like vastly different from what the others are doing, because most of the others were coming into AI. We were fundamentally AI from the start.
So basically the unique value proposition that you're offering. So one, you're saying that you basically are wrapped around LLM, and the way that you want to differentiate ourselves of the market is the number one focus that you saw is privacy and security.
Privacy, oh sorry, also the industry knowledge. Like if you go out and work for like with any regular LLM, like HubSpot has their own and Zendesk has their own, but they're not industry specific. There's a lot of very industry specific issues related to buying a car that we could answer. And then finally, also all our integrations into the other solutions. Like when you're talking to a chatbot, you're just talking to a human, but you want that to be sent over to, for example, book a test drive. You want it to be sent in to book a service appointment. You want it to be able to answer questions about service pricing. All of these things here are things that the dealership cares a lot about, that if you don't have the industry knowledge and you don't have the integrations into the industry systems, you can never do these things here. So this is probably the most important one. Like today, like after we had built the first two parts, that's the one that's actually the most sticky part right now, is like we are the industry experts in automotive. And we not only are like the best technologies and all that, but we're also very, very like knowledgeable about the automotive industry, understand what people care about, understand what their customers care about, the dealers care about, have the integrations, solve again these problems. Like more and more of these problems we're solving for enterprise are showing up again now. So a lot of these learnings we had from there are coming into the Caesar platform now as well.
But is it the domain knowledge or the customer know-hows that you guys know as a strong, unique differentiator? Because you have other competitors that they know the market as much as you do.
So it's not about the market, it's those hours we're spending inside the dealerships, right? Okay. Like understanding their buying journey, like understanding when do people want to do a test drive, that people, when they book a test drive, they don't show up. So maybe you want to, like, the dealers want to take a deposit. Knowing like when a dealer can be like very arrogant about, like sometimes there was a period where, especially during COVID, like you couldn't buy a car. And then there are periods where you cannot get rid of a car. And understanding like these rhythms here and understanding how they want to be able to change their solution based on, now a lead is not worth as much as it used to be. Now I need to get as many leads as possible. So having that understanding of what they care about, that's what really makes a difference. And also the integrations. It's an industry with so many different systems that if you don't prepare for the integrations, then it doesn't really make a difference.
This is one of my questions. How did you integrate all the data, inventory, pricing, financing, so the AI can deliver answers, I mean, almost instantly?
So, I mean, there's so many different systems. So it was a lot of these systems we'd built for the enterprise solution we could reuse for this. But otherwise it was going one by one and like integrating with each one of the systems. Again, hard problems often come with a lot of hard work. Like you can be smart in some situations and find a mathematically smart solution, but sometimes you have to just do the grinding work. And that's your barrier to entry. It's just like, I'm going to grind my way through this and I'm going to use this opportunity to understand things very deeply and use that. So that was still also one of the, like, an integration is an integration. You can use technology to make it easier. Now with the rise of MCPs, for example, we adopted MCPs in the minute it was launched, but with the rise of that, integrations are going to be easier than ever. So that's going to make our integrations value proposition less, because more and more are going to offer it. But then we're still going to be ahead by saying, okay, but MCP is going to basically be changing the way we're, like, it's going to be like being on Google. Like, you have to have your system on Google. So we have all this know-how. So we're going to use that know-how and experience on how to build these solutions up and connecting with other systems and all that. So we're going to have to keep on evolving our value proposition and our offerings to our customers depending on how the market is moving. And this is also why I'm saying, when you're going into startups here today as a new founder, it's going to be like very, very tough, because you have to figure out all these problems and learn about this new industry and learn about all these things here, while also staying ahead with all these changes that are happening. We're having a hard enough time staying ahead of the game on like what's going on in the latest research, what's the newest products we have to try out. More and more of them are coming out. So it's even harder to dissect where should we go. More and more avenues of AI is coming, of like voice, video, operators. Like it's so easy to get confused and get misdirected of where should I go. So we're having a harder time about that, and startups are going to have an even harder time. So it's hope like people can stay focused during that period.
So what's next for Seez now that you guys are part of Pinewood?
Yeah. So the acquisition to Pinewood was like a big deal for us. I look at it more as a merger than just an acquisition. So basically, the slogan now is like Pinewood AI powered by Seez, and we see that as like we're going to be bringing the AI capabilities we have into their massive infrastructure and distribution channel and data. They have so much data, like and their know-how. They also have a deep know-how of like how to build like for so many different clients and so big in so many different countries. And like, there's so much good in there, but taking our capabilities into that infrastructure is what we're focusing on. So the next thing we're focusing on right now is like embedding our technologies into their systems. And we've already started doing that. Like, that's why we're so early with MCPs as well. We're pushing them into MCPs as well. They're developing their MCP servers right now. And with that, we'll be able to basically do stuff that they can do in their system, which has a lot more functionalities than we do on for example, financing, book handling, all this kind of stuff that we didn't touch on in our buying journey, because we focused on sales, not on the backdoor bookkeeping, that there's even more problems to solve in that industry. And they did that. So by changing their APIs into MCPs and taking our AI and actually being able to do these solutions here, we'll now be able to offer new technologies that people have never imagined before, because we can now do the things in their system that normally required an interface, and we can do that in totally new ways.
And looking back, what is the biggest lessons you've learned as a founder and a product leader?
The biggest lesson, stay humble. Like there's always somebody smarter than you out there, and like always try to learn from like whatever you're like seeing. There's always something new to learn. Stay very curious. Like whenever you step into any kind of company or environment or something like that, like always be curious about how do the things work, because every single interaction you're having with people, every single interaction you have with a company is an opportunity for you to understand something and get an epiphany of something that might change your whole company. It was the smallest moments throughout our history that changed everything for us. And it was the most unexpected, unplanned things that made this thing here happen. The way that the acquisition with Pinewood happened was a random interaction with a guy at I think Tarek, my co-founder, at an event. He met a guy that's like poked him on the shoulder, and they were just having a conversation. And then he introduced him to one guy, who introduced him to another guy, who introduced it to the founder of Pinewood, the CEO of Pinewood. And that's how we got to talk with them. And then like the whole thing evolved. But it was a random chain of events that happened. So always stay curious. Always like don't try to look for what can I get out of this opportunity here. Like just be humble and see where life takes you, because there's going to be a million different opportunities happening along the way, and just take it on the ride and enjoy it. Don't try to over-control it.
That's why it's been an amazing episode. I still have so many questions I haven't covered. We definitely need to do a part 2.
Sure.
But where can our audience go find you, learn more about you, or see how can be of help to you?
So, I mean, you can find us on like LinkedIn, like find me on LinkedIn or ourselves on LinkedIn, our website, like Seez.co, all our social media platforms as well. Like we're always easy to reach out to there. info@Seez.co is an email where you can always reach out to our team as well. Myself, like I'm also easy to reach. I can't answer all emails, but like Andrew@Seez.co is also an easy way. But in general, like whenever there's any kind of like big startup events or something like that, I'll be there. If you see me around, feel free to poke me on the shoulder. I'm always open to talk.